I didn't know that. I'm an addict named Bill.
Hi, Bill.
I found out I was doing this workshop about 10 minutes ago. So we have no kind of organization here that I'm aware of. Let me say that my clean date is September 26, 1980. That means 35 years. So I go back in the days before we had a basic text or a step working guide or anything much more than a little white book and 3 pamphlets. And when I got clean, it would be nice to say that we really jumped right into the steps and we couldn't get started working them and all the other stuff. But I got clean on the East Coast, and it wasn't happening on the East Coast at that point. I went through a treatment center, which is all right, you know, it's a nice way to stop off before you begin your recovery. But and they had us do a 4th step out of the Alcoholics Anonymous Big Book, sorta. You know, I mean, what the hell? You're still detoxing. What are you going to write? You know, but being an addict, you know, when it got to looking at the steps, oh hell yeah, I worked the 4th step. You know, I'm done. And you know, I was in a 4-week treatment center, and they kept me there for 8 weeks, and so I got to do all 12 steps in the treatment center. And therefore, I was done. You know, I mean, I don't have any more step work to do. You know, I'm good. And so, at about a year and a half clean, we started Narcotics Anonymous in Orlando. And I had a sponsor at that point, and we really didn't get into writing the steps. You know, we didn't write the 1st, 2nd, and 3rd step at all. You know, and really probably wouldn't have written a 4th step if there was any way around it. But we didn't. I mean, we just kind of hung out. I mean, I worked the traditions way before I worked the steps. You know, I was involved in service from the very beginning, and which was really, I was definitely had service-based recovery, not recovery-based service, and so I was pretty much self-will run riot and pretty much a lunatic and pretty crazy. And finally, the sponsor of mine said, "Well, you're going to have to write a 4th step." And he said, "And I'm going to pray that you don't get laid until you get your 4th step finished."
Wow.
You know, so I didn't need much incentive after that, you know. So I locked myself in my office for the weekend, you know, had some food and stuff. And it was way before cell phones, so you didn't have to worry about being interrupted. And, you know, I had an answering service, so if the phone rang, it wasn't going to bother me. And I wrote a fearful and not very thorough 4th step just to get it done. And I finished this thing, you know, it took me like 2 days, and wrote it out of the AA Big Book because that was really all there was. And I had this big list of resentments that people should have had against me because everything was my fault, you know. And so I sat down and I shared this with my sponsor. And, you know, I've heard since then all these people talking about, oh, I felt this tremendous sense of relief, and it was like a weight was lifted. I didn't feel anything, not a thing, you know, except I knew that, you know, the curse was going to be removed and maybe my social life would improve. But, so, you know, I mean, and I really believed that I had worked the 4th step. And by sharing this with him, and obviously since I had talked to God before I wrote the step, after I finished the step, then and myself that I had finished the 5th step. You know, back then, 4th, 5th, and 6th step were 1 step. You know, you did your 4th step, you shared it with your sponsor, if you did your 4th step, and I really don't think that was doing a 4th step. But after you do that, you shared it with your sponsor. That was another human being, and God was there, so he heard it, and you were there, so you heard it, so that's 5, right? And 6 is your sponsor told you what was wrong with you, and that was your character defects, and you had something to ask God to help you remove, you know. And that was really, you know, all there was to it, you know. And the difference was his perspective even on the 6th step. Because, there's some of us who believe that all the character defects are one form or another of the 7 deadly sins. And there's others that believe they have 4,000 character defects, that if they scratch their left ear, it's a defect because they should have scratched their right ear. So it depends on what you consider to be a character defect. And I have lots of friends of mine who have these lists of 200 character defects, and I have a lot of respect for their recovery, but I'm not one of those people. My basic character defect is an offshoot of fear. Everything else is from fear, but we'll get back to that a little bit later. So that was my first run through the steps. And that got me till about 3 years clean, and then I was fortunate enough to have to change sponsors. And my new sponsor said, your pride and ego aren't going to keep you clean any longer. And you better get your ass into the steps. And he had a sponsor in California, which was Mecca back in 1982, And they were writing all the steps in California. So he had me write a first step and a second step and a third step, and then we set a date for when the fourth step had to be written. And he wanted me to write what was called an autobiographical fourth step. Now, I was 40-something years old then, and he wanted every situation and every feeling and everything I could remember from the time I was a little kid until that day, what my feelings were behind it, what the situation was, where was my part, and blah, 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 write the whole thing out. At about 250 pages and, my third composition book, I thought I was finished. Now, the interesting thing was I was married at the time, and my marriage was going down the tubes. And on those 250 pages, there weren't 5 pages about my relationship. I don't know whether it was a priority, fear, all of the above, but it wasn't there. So obviously, my best efforts, and they were really much better efforts at that point, were not thorough. So we had this appointment. My sponsor lived in Miami. I lived in Orlando. And so I'm on the turnpike driving down to Miami on a Friday afternoon to share my fourth step. And I'm driving and still writing as we're going down there so I can finish the fourth step before I get there. And I get there and I'm finished and I'm ready. And he says, well, we're going to go to a meeting and then we're going to go to dinner. And it's like, what? I'm ready, man. Let's do this thing. And it's no. And we got through at the meeting, we got through at dinner, we did all this stuff. He said, we'll do the step in the morning after breakfast. Really? And basically what he said to me, you kept me waiting 3 months, I'll keep you waiting one more day, It's only fair. And I sat there and somehow or other he stayed awake through all 200 and however many pages I read to him. And he sat there with a notebook and he was taking notes. And when he was all done, he handed me a single page. And that's my fourth step, was condensed to a single page. Because it said whatever the situation was, and then it said see above, see above, see above, see above. Because all I had done was change the names, places, and faces, and repeated the same behavior over and over and over again, trying to make it look different every time. And what I saw in my fourth step was that I was willing to do anything I could do to get my own way. And that was bottom line. No matter how I tried to clean it up, no matter what I tried to do with it, my inventory revolved around what can I do to get what I want when I want it. And what lengths was I willing to go to get it. And it was interesting. I had about 4 years clean then. The using part of the fourth step is I was willing to do anything. I had no conscience whatsoever. And I could see a conscience starting to develop in the 4 years that I was clean. Now, I would love to tell you that at my time that I turned that fourth step in, I would never do any of the things that I did even up until probably 10 years clean, because it's a process, and I was a long way from finished with it. And there were plenty and plenty of situations where I didn't do what I would be proud of at this point in my life, but it was the best I could do at the time. And, you know, and I need to remember that when I'm dealing with people in their recovery now. You know, what was I like when I had that kind of clean time? Most of them are way better than I was then. So I got through that stuff, and I figured I'd done a 5th step. And he said to me, no, now we have to look at the exact nature. How do you get what you want? What's your behavior look like? How would I know? Or how would you know that you're doing these things? And it was really, really simple. I mean, my best method for trying to get my own way was manipulation. And guilt and shame were my favorite tools. You know, I would try to dope fiend you into getting what I want, trying to guilt you, trying to shame you, trying to make me be a victim, whatever it took to get you to do what I wanted to do. And it was really difficult for me to look at that point and go on from there. And then we finally got to the 6th step, you know, and I looked at what my defects of character were, and it was all the same thing. I mean, it was basically, I was absolutely petrified that I was not going to be okay, that you weren't going to like me, that I wasn't going to like me, that I wasn't going to be successful, that I wasn't going to have enough, whatever enough is. And it all was based on fear and lack of faith in a power greater than myself. You know, I thought I had worked the 3rd step. When I got to my 6th step, I had to go back to my 3rd step, because I certainly couldn't have had all of those defects of character if I was willing to turn my will and my life over to the care of God and my understanding. So what I notice with the guys that I sponsor is the ones that get jammed up on a 4th step haven't finished their 3rd step. Right? And without that 3rd step, without having the faith in the fact that I've turned my will and my life over to the care of a God that I can trust, and that care of God is going to say to me, it's going to be all right no matter what happens next, how am I going to do a 4th step? So that was the closest thing I had to a fearless and thorough 4th step at that point. And then I got to a situation where I started to use the steps as a quick fix. You know, oh, I'm in a jam, I'm going to call my sponsor, find out what step I got to do now. How am I going to fix this? You know, and you know, and it worked for a while. You know, every time I got into a situation that wasn't going my way, you know, and my sponsor told me something early in my recovery, 3-4 years clean. He said to me, the only time you're scared, the only time you're angry, the only time you're in pain, the only time anything is wrong with you is if you don't get your own way. And I kind of looked at him like, you're being really harsh. You know, it can't be that simple. You know? But I tell you, it's 30 years later, and I'm still waiting for the first time I can say to him, see, it's not always that way. Because every time I thought I had him, you know, like my mother died, I said, yeah, I see it. He said, no, you're not getting your own way. You want your mother to be alive for the rest of your life. So anytime I'm upset about something, I have to look at, okay, what is it why am I upset? What am I not getting that I want? Why isn't it going the way I want it to go? And it really pissed me off that it was that simple. You know, it really did. I mean, you gotta be kidding me, man. I'm not that easy. I'm not that. Yes, I am. Thank God, yes, I am. So, my 6th step, the hardest part of my 6th step for me was to become entirely ready. You know, I remember having a long talk with my grand sponsor's wife. And she would, those of you who knew her, she was a great woman from California. And if she put her arm on your shoulder and said to you, Biff, honey, you better sit down because you were in for a long one. And she said to me, Biff, honey, you're not working your 6th step. And I said to her, Sydney, there are certain things I am not willing to give up. I said, I don't want to be lustless for the rest of my life. You know? And I got the same reaction from her. She thought it was hysterical, right? And she said to me, you don't understand this shit at all, do you? I said, obviously not. She said to me, character assets and character defects are all a matter of balance. She said, if your life and thinking is centered around something, it's probably a defect. If it helps you have a fuller life and be happy, joyous, and free, it can be an asset, and it's the same thing. She said, lust in a committed spiritual relationship is a good thing. Lust, if your life and thinking are centered around it in one form or another, is a character defect. And again, it can't be that simple, but it is. And what I found is that my survival skills, which ended up being most of my character defects, can still be put to good use if I'm using them with the proper motivation and the proper method, that I'm not willing to harm myself or somebody else, where I'm trying to do the greater good, where I'm trying to do the next right things. Some of those manipulation skills are no longer manipulation, but they're sharing experience, strength, and hope. So it's a matter of, to me, that's what the steps started to teach me, was that everything I thought was negative wasn't negative. Everything I thought was positive wasn't positive. And that my job, if I was willing to take it, or my opportunity, which is what it really was, to become better, to be a better person, to be of service to others, was coming through learning who I was in these steps and learning what I can do to better be of service to somebody else. And you know, I really believe the only reason I'm still alive is because I'm here to serve others, because I'm not young anymore, and I've had stage 4 cancer, and I've had lots of other things that should have taken me out, and I'm still here. So far be it for me to figure out why, but I kind of figure out, if I'm here, then my job is to do the next right thing. So I finally got to a point where I go, you know, I mean, my favorite thing for my sponsor was, I want you to write a relationship inventory, you know. And relationship 4 steps are really good things until it's see above, see above, see above, see above. Right? Because hopefully each relationship will give you an opportunity to learn how to do something different in the next relationship. And hopefully the inventory will show you what you've done differently and what worked and what didn't work and where you can improve in the next one. And that's not only relationships with members of the opposite sex, that's relationships with anybody. My first set of relationships inventory, I want a relationship with your mother, I want a relationship with your father, I want a relationship with your teachers, what? And so the next 4th step I did was purely on the way that I could relate to other people and the way other people related to me. And I got to see who I was in relationships, and guess what? I was controlling and manipulative. Imagine that. I mean, I know nobody else here can relate to that, because you know, nobody else is like that here. But that's how it was, you know. And I didn't even change my techniques. You know, and I got to do in the 5th step, I was doing the same thing over and over and over again. I was just better at it. I was more polished. I had more practice. I made it look better. But looking in the mirror, I knew damn well I was doing the same thing. And I'm the one that I had to make peace with on that. And then the defect of character was exactly the same thing. Yeah. My greatest defect of character is that I'm selfish and self-centered because I'm afraid. And I am willing to do anything I need to do to protect myself. And when I finally realized, what the hell do I have to be afraid of, all of that stuff stopped. And how did I realize that? You know, when I finally made a list of all the things I was afraid of and then put next to them, if all of these things happen, where are you going to end up? Firstly, I didn't know, you know, because when I project, my projector only sees black. It doesn't see anything else. It's always negative. I am never projecting anything positive in the future. You know, even in a fantasy, it ends up being negative by the time I'm done. Right? Secondly, my crystal ball is broken long time ago. I can't see any of that stuff at all. So when I get into the future, you know, it's kind of ridiculous. So when I'm trying to sit there and figure out what it is I'm afraid of, bottom line comes out the same thing. I'm afraid I'm not going to get what I want. Damn it. There we are again. What do I do about that? I either believe that there's a God of my understanding who has my back and who has my best interests at heart. And I don't know how many more things that God has to do to prove it to me, because I'm still here. I got 35 years clean. I've survived stage 4 cancer. I was able to get involved in a significant relationship with a woman after being single for 27 years in this program, and was willing to do it differently. Finally, after all of those times. And if I can do it, anybody can do it. I'm here. If you want a hope, here, I'm your picture of hope. Because there was no way in hell you would have made a ton of money betting against me ever being able to be in a successful relationship. And all I'm here to tell you is that it wasn't me. It was me finally saying, I don't know what the hell I'm doing. Maybe I better stop doing that stuff and just see what happens. I surrender again. And I'm not surrendering to my desire to use any longer, because thank God that's been lifted. But I'm surrendering to my way. I no longer have to do this my way. How many walls do I have to hit before I'm going to believe my way doesn't work? And I'm here to tell you, I sponsor a lot of guys, and I haven't found one whose way works yet. And I don't believe that's unique to us in the program. I just think we're more sensitive to it, and I think we react more dramatically when we don't get our own way than normies, or whatever you want to call Earth people, But I really believe that it's kind of human nature for us to be self-centered and try to get our own way. And this program has taught me that it's okay to go against my nature. And it's okay to find a different way. And that different way is given to me through the steps, with a relationship with a God of my understanding that I've gotten to know through the steps. And that I have absolute faith in the fact that I will get exactly what I need, no matter how scared I want to be. I'm one of these guys, can I afford to do this? No. Can I afford not to do it? No. One of those kind of things. I want. I don't need. I have very few needs anymore. Right? My problems are truly, for the most part, luxury problems. But I tell you what, I know a lot of people using over luxury problems. So what I have to look at is, like, I get nervous because I get paid for what I do. How much more blessed do you have to be? I'm 74 years old. I'm working 30, 35 hours a week. Most people my age can't even get a job, right? I'm appreciated where I work. I make a decent living, and if things slow down and it looks like I'm not going to make enough money that week, I start to panic. And then it's like, take a deep breath. God didn't bring you this far to drop you on your ass. It's going to be okay. And as soon as I take that position, all of a sudden I have more work. It never fails. If you're a gambler, which I'm not encouraging at all, there's a saying gamblers have, scared money never wins. As long as I'm uptight and I don't trust God, he's not going to hear what I have to say, Well, I don't believe he is. As soon as I get to the point where it's, no matter how this turns out, it's going to be okay, okay changes tremendously. And okay and my way are not necessarily the same thing. Usually it's not. And as soon as I got comfortable with the fact that the way it turns out is the way it's supposed to be, even if it's not the way I wanted it to be, it's probably better than I could have imagined, even if I can't see it right now. And that's a process. It's not something that happened to me at 5 years clean, or 3 years clean, or 3 times through the steps, or 10 times through the steps. It's an ongoing process, and I have to continually live this program. And the thing that happened to me that probably pissed me off more than anything is I was in a jackpot of some kind, in my mind, of course. It was probably not a real deal anyhow. And I called my sponsor looking for a fix. What do you want me to write? And he says, you're not writing anything. What? He said, you've written this shit long enough. It's time for you to live those steps. Make them a part of your life, incorporating on your life in everything that you do. And when I go to make a decision now, I usually work all 12 steps on that decision. It doesn't take me 10 minutes. It doesn't take me 5 minutes half the time. And part of that decision is an inventory. Yeah. Why am I even considering this thing? What's in it for me? What's in it for the people around me? I never used to do that, you know. If I was going to do something, it's like, is this going to get me what I want? And that's not where I'm looking anymore, you know, because what I want is to feel as good as I feel when I get to feel like I've done the next right thing. And that took a long time to happen, but it would never have happened to me had it not been the steps. And I hear all these folks that are afraid about the fourth step. I'm afraid to write my fourth step. You already know what's in your fourth step. What the hell are you afraid of? It's already a part of you. You afraid to put it on paper? Why? It's a part of you. You know what it is. You're not going to learn anything about yourself that's going to do you any harm. So, we make such a damn big deal about the fourth step. You know, we're talking about being selfish and self-centered, then I'm going to tell my sponsor, you sit in a room and obsess about yourself and put it on paper. You know, and it's a matter of you know, balance. Where do you find that balance? And the big thing for me, before I do any kind of step work with my sponsees or for myself or anything like that, I still hit my knees. It's the way I was taught. I didn't believe in any of that stuff when I got here, but I did it anyhow. And since it worked, I keep doing it. And it's worked for 35 years, so I'll keep doing it. And it's the only problem now is the older I get, the harder it is to get up after I hit my knees. You know, it's not one of them bounce right up anymore and do it. It's have something to grab a hold of so you can push yourself up kind of thing. But it's worth it. It's definitely worth it. And my experience with the steps has been the freedom is beyond your wildest dreams. I never believed that I could be a calm person, that I could be easygoing. People who work with me said, do you ever lose your temper? Do you ever get upset by anything? Do you ever get angry? All you do is smile all the time. And I'm going to these people, man, you should have seen me 10, 15 years ago. You know? And if it can happen to me, it can happen to anybody. Because anybody who knew me 30, 35 years ago when I first got clean, I am absolutely sure that I am not the same person, nor do I ever want to be, but it's a gratitude that I can feel in my inner being, and it's a gratitude that comes from this program. You know? Because I watched other people like me become like I wanted to become. And I got a sponsor who was as self-centered as I was when he started, and by the time I watched him for a while, it almost looked like he glided through life. You know? It was almost effortless, and it was smooth, and it was a beautiful thing to see. And I knew if it could happen to him, it could happen to me. All I had to do was be willing to do what he was willing to do, and that's to work to the best of my ability to understand who I am, develop and maintain a relationship with the God of my understanding and the people in Narcotics Anonymous. Thank you very much.
Thank you. I'm an addict. My name is Wanda. My clean date is August the 23rd of 1983, and like Biff said, he was here before the basic text. I got here just as the basic text had came out, and everybody was so excited about it, and I didn't really understand the big deal, you know, about why they were so excited about this book. But how I got into the fellowship is I was in the psychiatric ward, and I figured out after I was in the psychiatric ward that wasn't my problem, because there was really people in there that needed to be there, and it was just, so. And then God has such a funny way of working in my life. I was on the same floor as the chemical dependency unit, and I would see all them people in that end of the hall, and they'd be laughing and joking and hugging. And went up to the nurse one day, and I said, I want what they're on. She said, they're not on anything. And I didn't think that was possible, because I'm getting a handful of free pills every 4 hours, and it's not helping me feel any better.
Is it one cooler, heat or?
No heat.
I think we're fine just like we are. Huh? Everybody okay comfort-wise? Yeah, we're good.
You sure?
Yeah.
And so anyway, I went into the treatment part to get out of the psychiatric ward, and that's exactly why I went in there. But I'm so glad I did, because I learned so much about myself. And they also told me I had to write my life story. And so when I did it, the first secret came out, and so I've done quite a few 4-steps over the years. I've had different sponsors and done them a lot of different ways, and that it was always, for a long time, it was that I had one secret that I wasn't really willing to tell anyone, and it was like it was no big deal. I don't know why I was so scared of it. I've heard a lot of 4-steps that were, a lot wilder than mine, but it was the way I felt about it, and that's what I had to take a look at, and I'm so glad that I started writing the steps, because I know that for me, if I had not been able to get rid of that shame and guilt, I wouldn't have stayed, because it was killing me, because, I'd lost custody of my kids when I was using, and just had a very horrible first marriage, and it was just, and I blamed myself for. And like Biff said, everything that happened in my life was somebody else's fault. I grew up real poor, and I didn't have all the advantages that kids had in school. And I believe that I was an addict before I ever used, because I always felt different, And I have a girlfriend that we were friends in elementary school, and she was just as poor as I did, but she didn't have the feelings I had, and she's not an addict, and so it's just like, it really made me take a look at that when she told me that about 10 years ago, that she didn't have those feelings. But I think when I did my next good 4th step, I didn't have a woman sponsor, I had a man sponsor, and so I was writing about all this sex stuff, and I was telling God, I said, I'm not going to share this with him, because he's not going to be able to understand where I was coming from, for the sex and stuff. And so I just started, really wondering what I was supposed. I, got clean in a pretty small area in Louisiana. And so I went to this camp out in Texas, and I prayed all the way over there and told God, I said, please let there be somebody there that I can tell this to, And it ended up being 2 women there from South Louisiana. And all day I battled with myself, which one do I ask if they'll listen to it? And I was told, ask both of them. And it worked out so good, because one of them had the kids that had gotten taken away from her, and she was able to give me all her insight. And the other one had all the sexual stuff happen that I had happened. So it was like, it was really a good thing. But I went back to my room that night, and I had always heard you're supposed to feel this big relief that all these secrets were out, and I didn't feel that big relief. I thought, well, maybe I didn't do it right, but the next day I got up, and it was like a weight had been lifted off my shoulders, it was just like so good. And one of the other ones that I did was real good. I had to do what the event was that happened in my life, and how I saw that it affected my life, and what my life would have been like if that event hadn't happened. And that's where I don't ever remember actually being sexually abused as a child, but I was I had a cousin that used to expose himself to me all the time, and that came out in that, and it started making me feel like a lot of guilt and shame, and I would call my sponsor, and I would say, I can't do this, it's too painful, I don't want to remember all this stuff, and she just kept encouraging me to keep writing, and I'm really glad that I did and got all that out, because I saw my brothers abusing 2 of my nieces, growing up, and so I don't know. It might come out someday in my memories, and it might not even happen to me. That's not important. It's just, what happened. But what I was taught too was that I admit this to myself, and I tell God when I'm doing a 5th step, I say, this is how I was, this is who I was. This is not how I want to be today, and I want to be a different person. And so, and then telling it to the sponsor, and trying to get everything out. And one of the things I learned early on when I'm listening to a step is I ask them when they're done, is there one secret you left out that you weren't going to tell me? And you can't believe how many times one more thing has came out that they were ashamed to write down, and I understand that, because I think it takes a lot of courage to be able to look at that stuff, because it brought up so much pain in my life, the stuff I'd done, and I wasn't a big thief, but it was just all the, and somebody pointed out to me too that I wasn't getting paid for the prostitution, but I was giving it to them for the drugs, or if they bought me a drink at the bar, and a lady told me one time, that's the same thing, so I had to take a look at that, that it was just, so it kind of made me put it all back into perspective too, that I was looking for love. I was just looking for it in the wrong places, because I just wanted to be loved so bad, because I was last of 14 kids, and I never felt like I got the love and the attention I needed, because I had nieces and nephews by the time I was born, and so it was just, I just wanted some love, and I knew, and after I got clean and started working at Step, I was able to see that's what I was seeking, with all the men, and thinking that I was going to find that one man that was going to fix me. He was going to make all my problems okay, and it just, if I could just find him, my life would be perfect. And I could quit using for periods of time before I got here, if I was in a relationship and it was going okay. And then, but as soon as I started, thinking that things weren't going my way, I would start, using again. And I always ended up wrecking the relationships. I had so many. But I like to talk, the 6th step is one of my favorite steps, because the first time that I did, I think, a really, really good 6th step is Sydney was my grand sponsor that he was talking about. And she says, you have to have 100 character defects. And when I had the sponsor I had at that time, when she told me that, I thought to myself, she know who I am? I had a lot of, I had double digits. I said, I don't have no 100 character defects. And I was living in Georgia and she was living in California, so I was going to go see her and share this with her. And I got out there, and I got there I went for 4 or 5 days. And I said, when I got there, I said, I only have 67. And she said, you're here for 4 days, keep writing. And so Sydney and I would go to meetings at lunch and and then go out to lunch afterwards with people, and I would say, what's your biggest character defect? And I would write it down, and then somebody told me, go in the P's, you'll get a whole bunch of them in the P's in the dictionary. It was just and I ended up with 100, over 100, but what she told me was, it's not important that you had that many, it's important that you did it, and you finished it, even though I didn't want to, so that's one of the things that, and I wasn't sure that all of them I was entirely ready to give up, I had a lot of control issues, and I think sometimes control, like you were saying, sometimes control can be a good thing, but not when I take it to extremes, and so it's got to learn how to have that balance Biff was talking about, with character defects. So I had to really take a look at that, and I know that when I started working the steps, I said, I told God this, I want to be the best person that I can be, and I think that that's what working the steps has given me over the years, that I always find something else to work on. I'm on 6 again right now, and for some reason, procrastination seems to be my biggest character defect right now. So I've answered all the questions. I just got to write the character defects. I've got the paper lined out, everything. I brought my book with me. I've been here 2 weeks. You think I've wrote one thing in that book? Nope. And I said I was going to finish it while I was here, and I have not done it. And I don't know, when you were sitting there talking, I was asking myself, why am I not wanting to write down these character defects? I've done it before, I don't know what I can't really figure out what's really keeping me from wanting to finish it, because I want to finish the rest of the steps, and be able to move on. So that's what I've got to really start praying about and asking God, to help me get through. I don't know if it's fear or what, I just can't put my finger on it. But my other procrastination hurts me a lot, because I'll sit there in the morning, I don't work, I'm retired, and I'll sit there in the morning and I'll think, well, I need to clean the house today. noon, I'll still be sitting there playing on the computer. Oh, I need to clean the house today. I need to wash clothes, whatever it is, or I need to be going to the store, and I will put it off until the last possible minute, and or starting dinner. I know my husband wants to eat at 5:30, and I'll be waiting. Sometimes I wait till 5:30 to start cooking. It's just like, I don't know. It's just like it scares me sometimes. That I'm so willful. But I realized that through working these steps too, that I met my husband in recovery. He had 6 years and I had 18 months, and this May we'll have been married 30 years. And I know that I could not have done that if me and him both hadn't had a sponsor and working the steps, because we went through a lot of rough patches, and had talked about separating it at one time early on, and because I did not know how to have a healthy relationship, and he had already worked through the steps when we got together, so he was working on himself, and he knew a lot about what to do, and I didn't know how to have a conversation, I didn't know how, without yelling and screaming and slamming doors, and so he would ask me, would you please not slam doors when you're mad, and it was like, so it was tough. But what I did learn to do was we would start arguing. I would go in the bathroom and I wouldn't slam the door. I'd just shut the door and I would start praying and crying. And once I got through crying, then I could go back and tell him why what I was mad about or why I was mad, and we could talk it out, And I think one of the most important things we learned too was not to go to bed angry. Not to go to sleep angry. We'd stay up if we had to stay up till late talking about it, but. Because it was always me too. It was always me wanting my way. It was just always stupid stuff. And some of the biggest arguments, I couldn't tell you today what they were. And I wish I would have kept a lot of my writings over the years, because, I had a sponsor tell me this one time. She said, "You're going to think." Because you think this is a big deal right now, you read it a year from now and you're going to think, God, that was so petty, but it was such a big deal at the time it happened, and that's what was scaring me, that I can build it up to be something that it's not, that it's really not. And he is so easygoing, it's just like, he makes me mad sometimes because he, doesn't want to get into a conflict with me. He'll just say, "Okay, Wanda, you could be right," it's just, it's that could be right. You caught that, yeah. So, but I'm really glad that I found Narcotics Anonymous and that I was willing to start working these steps. And I tell, I know that I've sponsored some newcomers and they're like scared of working the steps too. And they say, what if I don't do it right? I said, there's no right or wrong way to do the steps. I thought that too. I would say I'm not doing it right, but it's being willing to write that stuff and get it out is what I think, and not keeping it in my head. And I haven't wanted to use in a long time either, but I have had periods through the years where I really, really, really wanted to use. And one of them was when I lived in Georgia. I got fired from a job, and it was like 50-something miles from my house one way. And if y'all know Georgia traffic, y'all know that was a blessing that I got fired from that job. But I was so devastated that all the way home, we lived in Lawrenceville, and this was way out near Cartersville where I was working. And all the way home, I was thinking, man, if I knew where a bar was, I could go get drunk. And then my other side of my brain would say, if I could just get home and call my sponsor, it'll be okay. And I got home, made it home, and she told me I had to go to a meeting every night that week and say, I wanted to use, but I didn't, and that was the miracle, and I wouldn't have been able to see that myself. And just the other thing I want to share is I went through lots of periods over the years where I wasn't really sure about this whole God concept, that I didn't think that he was really looking out for me. And I have to go back to the third step, and make that decision again to turn my will and my life over and believe. I think that if I'm willing to believe that he's helping me, then he's going to be helping me. But if I got that block there, and I had it one time, we lived in California, I had the block there real bad. And I did not think that he was acting in my life. And I had to write every day for a week. I had to write how I saw that God was in my life that day. It's like, so it's just like the fellowship has taught me so much, through working these steps and being willing to look at myself and not how Bob treats me, how I want to be treated, and not let other people treat me how, the wrong way, I have a sponsee right now that I'm pretty sure is using, and she's not admitting that, you know, and so I've got to decide what to do about that when I get home. You know, I'm not good at confrontation. You know, I'm just not, and so you know, but that's one of the things that, you know, I talked to my sponsor, and we're going to work out a plan. You know, of how I'm going to ask her. You know, if she's been using. And it's going to be difficult. It sounds so easy when it's coming out of my sponsor's mouth to say, you know, but then when I actually got to tell her, and because, you know, we have a sponsorship page in my family, and if she's using, I got to take her off that sponsorship page. She blocked me on Facebook too, so that was one thing, you know, that makes me think, you know. Anyway, so thank y'all for being here, you know, and listening. It really, I'm just really grateful. I just found out last night too. I thought I was chairing this meeting, and he said, you know, so I found out I was actually going to be doing it instead of chairing it. So, you know, but I'm grateful, and I've learned, you know, that when Narcotics Anonymous asked, you know, this is a way of I can give back some service work, and I got Sharon into it today too at the last minute. So that's how it works around here. Thanks.
I just got a couple of quick things too. You know, one thing is the only wrong way to write a step is not to write it. Right? And the other thing is that for me, the sixth step was I had to become entirely ready. And becoming entirely ready was all I had to do was look at the sixth step, look at the defect, the character, and continue to look at it. And the more I looked at it, the more it became a part of my life. And the more I was acting out on it. And if you want to become entirely ready, act out on your character defects. It'll definitely make you entirely ready. Thank you.